And we are live. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to delve into this where Richard Dawkins is really pressed here by Piers Morgan. And I really respect Piers Morgan for doing this because Richard Dawkins oftentimes will go in circles and circles and circles, as you will see. But let me know what you think in the comments below. We're going to get right into it. And I have a few points here that I want to talk about, not only Christianity, but also specifically this debate. Let's get into it.
Traditionally associated with God.
Now, you see, Richard Dawkins, this is the nub of, I think, my whole issue with your position on this. And you can respond, obviously, to what you just heard in a moment. But given your new book is about the genetic book of the dead, and it effectively takes us from here to in perpetuity on a genetic trail where each part of existence feeds the next and so on. And I totally subscribe to that. The genome of every body and every organization and so on creates, as you say, a comprehensive dossier on all the world as it moves forward. I get it. But when you go back to the very start, what is there before that? And that, I think I asked you last time, and Professor Meyer brought that up again as being the flaw in your position, which is what is there before it starts? What is nothing?
This is a question for a physicist, not a biologist. But what I would answer to Professor Meyer is that we need to explain complexity in terms of simplicity. And of course, it's true that I cannot say what was there before the Big Bang. Physicists sometimes tell us that the word before doesn't even mean anything before the Big Bang. But whatever it was, it was simple.
Doesn't it?
You cannot suddenly invoke.
Doesn't it have to? Someone as logical as you are, I believe you are, you think about this all very logically. A logical mind surely has to appreciate that before the Big Bang, there has to have been something before then. Otherwise, what is nothing?
A physicist will tell you that
what do you tell me?
I'm trying to tell you what a physicist would say, first of all. They would say that you cannot use the word before for the Big Bang. Time began at the Big Bang. There was no before the Big Bang. I know it's contrary to common sense. Physicists don't necessarily deal with common sense.
Well, it makes no sense, does it? And that's what I mean. I think you're a logical man. That cannot make sense to you. The idea that you're not even allowed to use the word before the Big Bang, when every part of both of our brains tells us that that's obviously nonsensical. Doesn't that make you think again?
We are not physicists. I, like you, am completely baffled by what physicists say to me, which is that you cannot use the word before for before the Big Bang. Time itself began at the Big Bang. Now, that is totally counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to me. It's counterintuitive to you. It's counterintuitive to Stephen Meyer. But we are not physicists. And you need to talk to a physicist. Talk to a physicist about that. And they will tell you that you cannot use the word before for the Big Bang.
Yeah, but you think that's as preposterous as I do.
I do, because I'm not a physicist.
You've just written a book as a biologist called The Genetic Book of the Dead, in which you talk about the body and the genome, comprehensive dossiers, and so on. So you're prepared to expound a philosophy based on that as a biologist, which I completely respect, and it makes perfect sense. The book makes perfect sense the way that you have written it. But why would you then think that a physicist cannot be contradicted just simply because they're a physicist? I could contradict what you say as a biologist.
No, you really aren't getting it. I'm so sorry. Modern physics is exceedingly mysterious. It really is. I mean, have you tried to read some of the difficult modern physics books? It really is very difficult to understand. And intuition doesn't do it. You cannot use human intuition. Human intuition was built up by evolution over many millions of years to survive on the African plain, hunting and gathering, looking for water holes, looking for mates and so on. Our brains were not built to understand the profundities of the origin of the universe, the end of the universe, the kind of things that physicists deal with. I think it's actually amazing that at least some human brains are capable of dealing with this kind of stuff. My brain isn't, and nor is yours.
No, but that's my point, though.
I wish it were.
Well, yeah, I wish both our brains could. But the truth is, it's because the human brain can't comprehend this, including, I don't think, any physicist. Because the moment they say you can't have before the Big Bang, they lose me completely just on a common sense perspective. That reason that I think there has to be a power that is greater than the human brain. And that gives me succor to my belief in God, and why I think people turn to gods of different types, obviously. They turn to that because it is incomprehensible otherwise what has happened here.
There has to be something more difficult to understand than the human brain can understand. I accept that. But it doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be the kind of God who, forgives sins and listens to prayers and things like that. There is something very mysterious, and I don't understand it, and you don't understand it, and maybe we never will. I think It's not clear whether physicists understand it. Some do, some don't, but it's obviously going to be very mysterious. But God is not that interesting mystery. God is just a personification of human desires, a father figure, something like that, somebody who looks after you. You said at the beginning it was comforting for you. God is somebody who listens to prayers, who forgives sins, who takes action for the benefit of humanity or not, as the case may be. We're not talking about that now. We're talking about deeply, deeply mysterious, profound things which physics is working on, and it's very difficult to understand. And the fact that you don't understand it and I don't understand it is not good grounds for suddenly invoking a supernatural sky daddy.
But if our genomes, if our genetic background has all the information which has led to us being what we are today, and that will obviously extrapolate as we go forward, then it does beg the question, doesn't it? Where does the original information come from?
Yes, it does. And as far as the biologist is concerned, we're talking about the original information coming at the origin of life. And that's something which biologists and chemists and physicists can deal with. But you've gone right back to the origin of the universe, to the Big Bang, which is another matter entirely, and which is not really relevant to the biological question of what happens once biology gets started, which is the origin of genetics, actually. It's the origin of the information which is passed from generation to generation, from living creature to living creature. That started maybe 3.8, maybe 4 billion years ago. The universe started more like 13.8 billion years ago, which is a much longer time ago, and which is a totally different question, nothing to do with biology.
But doesn't code have to have a coder?
No, of course it doesn't. Code arises spontaneously at the origin of life. Something very, very simple, probably, at the origin of life, which was not genetic, not DNA at least. It would have been some kind of genetic, some kind of coding, which would be a self-replicating molecule. Once you get a self-replicating molecule, then you have the possibility of mutation, which is the mistake in coding.
But where does that come from?
You were about to say something?
Yeah, where does it come from?
It comes from a random accident in chemistry at some time around 3.8 to 4 billion years ago.
Well, all of this is contrary to common sense. And as Piers Morgan said, it makes no sense. It's nonsensical. And Richard Dawkins even concedes here. He says, well, we are not physicists. I'm just as baffled as you are. But time began at the Big Bang, and it's totally counterintuitive, but we just accept that counterintuitive. And I have a few points here that I want to make to piggyback on this. But welcome, everybody, to Man After God. I'm Vince Revo. Welcome. We retake current events and questions you may be asking and analyze them from a biblical perspective. We want to know, what does God and the Bible have to say about this? And if you're in the Toronto area, would like to join us for church, please join us this Sunday at 1:45 p.m. The first thing I want to talk about is the need for cause beyond the universe, because Richard Dawkins avoids discussing this specific argument, pointing out that there is a question for physicists rather than biologists, and because he's a biologist, and that he cannot answer it because he's a biologist, of course, right? But when you think about it, we need to have a cause. If there's an effect, there needs to be a cause. And we understand this in Christianity. Richard Dawkins basically sidesteps the philosophical, the logical, and even the metaphysical implication that every effect must have a cause, effect. And this is foundational in classical metaphysics and logic and philosophy. And the Bible presents God as the uncaused cause, eternally existing outside time, space, and matter, initiating all creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You see, the Bible proposes that an external self-sustaining creator provides a satisfying explanation for the universe's origin, aligning with reasoned inference from creation's observable complexity. Because why? Because there is a mysterious force around here, just like what Dawkins is saying. And that mysterious force that physics is working on is God. Number two, rejecting intuitive understanding of origin. Richard Dawkins also suggests that intuitions shaped by evolution for survival may not help us understand the universe's origins. Okay, well, while we believe as Christians that our finite minds, yes, have limitations, but God has provided general revelation through creation, which points to him, that we can see him in creation, and that we believe that humanity made in the image of God has the capacity to seek, to understand higher truths, a view that extends beyond survival instincts, where the strong is just feeding off of the weak. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. Number three, denying the need for a God hypothesis. Again, here, Richard Dawkins remains skeptical, obviously, finding that physicists because they're brilliant and somehow they're special, that their counterintuitive explanations should be accepted, and that because we don't ask anything what's before the Big Bang or what caused the Big Bang, well, that means there's no creator. There's nothing before the Big Bang, that somehow nothing existed and then something came out of nothing. When the Bible describes God as transcendent, his eternal spirit existing independent of his creation, that he is the creator who has created the creation. And the idea that creation points to a God rooted in biblical teachings that emphasizes God's sovereignty and authority over time, space, and matter. And we see this time and time again in the Bible, where God's authority, his wisdom are clearly depicted time and time again. In Psalms 19:1, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands." Number 4, misunderstanding God as this wish fulfillment. Dawkins again compares God as this comforting sky daddy created by human beings, that we create God rather than God creates us. And therefore, I think there's some type of false empowerment there. Now we get to be God because we created God. When it's the other way around, it's God that created us. And we know that because we cannot create ourselves. We can be creative, but he is the ultimate creator. And by humans to explain the unknowns and to get somehow comfort and forgiveness, talking to the sky daddy really is just made out of nowhere. And this view on God misunderstands the biblical doctrine of God as both transcendent and immanent. God is both a personal being interacting with his creation, you and I, and he is also an infinite being, infinitely beyond space, time, and matter. He's omnipotent, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving. This is not about some wish fulfillment. Rather, the concept of God is grounded in historical reality, as seen in the dealings with God and Israel, God and the prophecies of Jesus Christ, the personhood of Jesus Christ. Imagine all of those prophetic writings coming into truth, into the personhood of Jesus Christ. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only God. That is Jesus Christ. God has absolutely transformed this world. We'll be asking how. Well, look at the moral and ethical standards. That was by Christians. Look at foundations of modern human rights that came from biblical principles. Look at the advancements of education that was created. Universities were created to teach the Bible. Look at the promotion of healthcare and charity, when before people of lower status like that were looked down upon, it was Christians that took care of those who society deemed useless. Look at the inspiration of art and culture and music. The greatest music pieces and artworks were created, inspired by Jesus Christ. Look at the development of modern science, where the scientists wanted to discover science because they knew in a moral lawgiver, they knew in a creator that was constant, that was immutable. So they wanted to study the nature of the creator, nature of creation, because they knew that the creator was consistent and was a lawgiver. We see the empowerment of social reform. You see the freeing of slaves. You see the elevation of women's status, women's rights. You see the shaping of modern justice, even the modern day first world countries building their foundations on biblical principles. You see hope, meaning, and salvation. Richard Dawkins himself says here that there is something very mysterious, and he admits that. He says, I admit that, very mysterious. And then he says, but it's not God. And he said, if you don't understand it and I don't understand it, it doesn't mean that we can just invoke some supernatural sky daddy. And here's the thing, nobody is invoking this. It was God that gave us revelation of who he was. And that's how beautiful that is, that he is so grand, he's so powerful, he's so big, yet he comes to us at our level and he loves us. He loves you. And there is a need for a lawgiver and the purpose of creation. You see, Richard Dawkins sees complexity in life in the universe, but separates this from any moral purpose, even saying that, oh, well, the code does not require a coder. In the same manner that if I took a book and I showed you a book, and I said, well, look at this book. It just exploded in a chamber and then created this book that made sense and that was logical and that was complex. You would think I was crazy. If I showed you a laptop and I said, well, a bunch of metal pieces and plastic pieces and glass pieces just exploded, there was this big bang and then it created this MacBook, you would think I was crazy. Yet we look at the complexity of DNA. We look at the complexity of the human brain. We look at the complexity of the human biology, of the solar system and everything around us and the laws that govern this world. And we say, oh, well, yeah, it's just some skydiving. Well, the Bible speaks of God as this ultimate source of order, morality, and purpose in creation, that the observable laws of nature reflect a rational and purposeful design, pointing back to a purposeful creator who not only crafted the physical laws, but also imbued creation with meaning. That in science we can find the how, but with God we can understand our ultimate why. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. And finally, the work of Jesus Christ, Jesus' redemptive work, which through the cross he reconciled God's creation, you and I, to God. that the ultimate revelation of God in Christ, who not only created the universe, but entered it to redeem you and I, redeem humanity. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus provides the ultimate answer to humanity's deepest questions about meaning, morality, and destiny. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. You know, my friends, Christ died for you. He loves you. He loves you so much. I hope you have been blessed by this. If you have, let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Until next time, remember, you are more than conquerors in Christ. God bless you. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and we'll see you again shortly. Bye for now.